The lemon stuff. I just want to say before I start, I'm really kind of starting to wrap us up and bring us into the big squeeze. But again, thank you to Alan and Deneen for opening up their home to have us here. We've got a group of people over here on what is, I'm now calling the big comfy couch because I could have taken a nap on that couch. But it's just been a pleasure to be here in person. We didn't get to do our first Lemonade in person. That was all virtual. It was in 2020, and we were in person for the 2 following that, and that was great to all be in one place. But it's really cool to be in an environment like this and be welcomed into someone's home. And Deneen for the extra work that she did to make all of the Lemony things happen. So I'm really glad to be here. And I'm really glad to be here to talk to you about transformation, because I think it's one of the most important topics that we need to be talking about and thinking about the future of our firms. Let's first start with talking about what transformation is. So your firm will most certainly go through some sort of a transformation in the next 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years. I don't know exactly how big it will be or how small it will be, but every single firm, starting from exactly where they are, needs to make some decisions about what is next. Because everything in the legal industry is changing. And you see it. You see what's happening, just the conversations that have been happening around AI. And I'm not going to talk a lot about AI in this 30 or 40 minutes that we chat. I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but I am going to mention it a couple of times, because I think that what it has shown all of us is that things can progress at an incredibly rapid speed. And there's a quote about today is the slowest day of change you'll ever see in your life. I really do believe that that's true. Every day there's something more, there's something bigger, there's something more for us to think about. But it's not just related to that. It's not just related to technology and AI. It's around what's happening in the sandbox programs that are happening in multiple states around non-lawyer ownership in law firms, and how we're going to think about the governance structure and the ownership structure of law firms in the future. There's going to be a lot coming at us. There's going to be a lot of conversations and lots of experiments about what the delivery of legal services looks like. And that means that the way that we've always done it, which we don't hear that phrase as much, it just kind of is the thing that happens, but the way we've always done it is going to need to be challenged. We're going to have to think about that differently. And the way we've always done it is one part of it that we need to kind of reimagine. The other thing that we need to reimagine is, one of the things that I'm regularly hearing in law firms is this conversation around what younger lawyers need to be successful. And oftentimes when we're talking about what younger lawyers need to be more successful, we hear things from older lawyers like, no one ever had to tell me how to go develop business. No one ever had to tell me how to take care of a client. No one ever had to tell me how to put my time in. No one ever had to tell me how. It goes on and on and on. And the reality is the people that we're bringing into our firms right now need something different from us than the people who came into our firms 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's just our new reality. We're also in this situation now where we have either 3, most often 4, but sometimes 5 generations of people in the workplace. And that means we have 5 groups of people who see the world through a different lens. They're all different. And so when we think about the challenges around understanding each other and wondering why something that was so true for me is not true for someone else, the generational challenges is a big part of that. So we have some work to do. We have some work to do in thinking about how we future-proof our firms. Technology is a piece of it. We're going to talk a lot about people. Starting first, though, let's talk about the technology side. Automation, workflow, reimagining. A lot of times I ask our clients, what would it look like if you invited a client to just come and pull up a chair, sit next to you, and watch you get their work done? What would it look like if that happened? You invited that client in, they were sitting next to you, and it was time for you to draft a document for them. And it took you 15 or 20 minutes to find a sample document. And then when you found it, you did the Control-R to do a find and replace, to remove someone's name and put someone else's name in. And then you arm wrestled with words automatic numbering for 10 or 15 or 20 minutes. And you might have been interrupted 7 or 8 times looking at your email or someone coming in your door asking you a quick question. If you think about the whole process of just doing a simple task for a client, it would be hard to imagine that you could give them a bill and have them say, that was all really valuable time spent. Now, the good news is none of us have to invite our clients in to see how work gets done. But it's a scary thought to most lawyers because we're not thinking about how to efficiently use our technology. Or worse yet, we think we know how to efficiently use our technology and we don't. Some of the technology changes that you're seeing around AI, and if you go to a conference or a trade show, every booth, everybody's talking about what their AI strategy is. I think that's important. I think we should all be thinking about how AI is going to change how we get work done. But I also think we can't take our eye off the ball of just the small things that we can do, like really learning Word, really learning Outlook, really learning what we need to know about our PDF programs. Those are such important skills. And those kinds of things, just getting your lawyers and paralegals to really understand Word, how to efficiently use styles, how to create a table of contents and a table of authorities, how to use Excel, how to use PowerPoint, how to use Microsoft Outlook. You know, if you look over at your Outlook screen, which might be the thing you're looking at right now, or it might just be the thing on the other screen, if you have 70,000 emails in your inbox and 35,000 of them are unread, that is not an efficient way to work. So how do we think about just the tools that we're using every day? That can actually be transformative. But why don't we do that? Everyone's busy. No one has time. No one has time for training. No one has time for training. But we have lots of time, or we find the time to work inefficiently over and over and over again every day. Every day, 4 hours of work is expanding into 8 hours. It's happening in law firms all over. We have to figure out how to invest the time in incremental improvement. If Ken's on the call, Ken Kane, I have to say relentless incrementalism. It's a big fan. Michael Cohen is a big fan of that phrase as well. Think about that, relentless incrementalism. It's just getting a little bit better every day. When we think about AI, we sometimes think about where we are and AI can take us up here. In most cases, that is just not going to be the reality. What it's going to look like is that curve where we're getting a little bit better every day. That's what we need to be thinking about. That's what we need to be planning for. And planning is a challenge because, again, we're busy. I was talking to a firm yesterday no, it wasn't yesterday, it was the day before. I was talking to a firm on Monday, and the executive director of the firm said, we've been trying to do a strategic plan at our firm since January 1st. And I said, well, when you say you've been trying to do it since January 1st, can you tell me a little bit about what try looked like? How are you trying to do it? And the truth of the matter is they just have been talking about it. They've just been talking about strategic planning. And they haven't done any of it. And the talks have gone like this. I said, give me an example of one of the conversations. And she was like, well, like my managing partner said, we really should talk about strategic planning. And I was like, okay. So we're not actually doing any of it. We're just talking about it because we can't find the time to plan. And the plan doesn't need to be, what are things going to look like in 10 years? That doesn't need to be the plan. In fact, I'd strongly encourage you to not try to figure out what something's going to look like in 10 years. Why? Well, 5 years ago, we would have never predicted that we would be in the situation that we're in 5 years later, right? Lots can change. Lots of things can happen. And so think about, what can I do in the next 6 months? What can I do in the next year? Or maybe you go as far out as 3 years, but it's really hard to think past that. So when it comes to planning, maybe you can't do a full-on strategic plan. Maybe you can't get all of those people in a room to think about the future of the firm, but can you at least tackle business development planning? We're gonna, if you listen to the conversation that we had with Susie before this, we talked about how do we educate people? A business development planning session is all about educating people and thinking about how we get creative about how we get new business in the firm. In this room earlier today, we were talking about lawyers. The lawyers are saying that we need more business, but everyone's saying they're too busy to do any business development. You got to pick, right? One of those things. You've got to give on something. If you want more business and you're too busy for more business, that is a conundrum, right? What are you going to do about that? And the truth of the matter is we have to think about how we use a portion of our time every day, every week, every month, every 6 months, every year in thinking about the future. So how do you think about your plan? How do you think about what is going to be next for your firm? This idea of transformation, that we are in this one place and we want to be somewhere else. I'm going to say this multiple times. Any innovation project or transformation project begins from exactly where you are. If someone comes up to me and says, I love that idea of transformation, what should we do? It's hard to talk about what you should do without really understanding where you currently are, because it begins from exactly your spot where you are. For some firms, transformation could just mean providing some word training. It could mean automating some of the documents that you create over and over again. It could mean more training on a legal specific software program that you're already using. One of the examples I used the other day, lots of firms, when they want to know if a client owes money, they don't look it up in their financial system. They call the accounting department or they send an email to the accounting department, when it's just so much faster if we could teach you how to log in. And I know you've already taught them how to log in 10,000 times and they still don't log in. But those kinds of little things, low-hanging fruit for figuring out how can we think differently about how we get our work done. That is what transformation is all about. Now, I know sometimes it's hard to get the lawyers on board with that because we'll go back to the B word again, the busy word. Everybody's busy, no one has time. Maybe there's an opportunity for you to think about how you get incrementally better, how you think about that 1% better in something that doesn't necessarily involve the attorneys, so you can have a success story. Maybe it is transforming your client intake process. Maybe it's around referral tracking. Maybe it's around how you run your accounts payable process. Maybe it's around expense reimbursement. You think about a thing that is more administrative in nature, where you really can control what that might look like. That is one way to think about taking one little piece of your operation and thinking about how to make it work more efficiently, how to make it less friction-y. Sometimes that's where my starting point when we're talking to a firm that really wants to think about what transformation means for them is I just start with, what's harder than it needs to be? Where do you feel like there's more friction than there needs to be? And we start having that conversation around these little things that can be impactful if we can just change these small things. And all of those small things stack up and make something much bigger. And that's really our challenge as we think about transformation, we think about change management, we think about the future. It's where are we today and what is one small thing that we can do? I used to say you can't boil the ocean. I used to say that over and over again, and I actually had this great visual of what looked like an ocean inside of a pot that looked like it was about to boil. You can't boil the ocean. That's what transform everything looks like. That's what we can't do one single thing until we have a strategic plan looks like. It's opting into boiling the ocean instead of taking that one small step. And that's what I really want to encourage all of you to do today. I know that you have lots of obstacles. I feel like the engagements that I get involved in with law firms are all about removing the obstacles, or sometimes even just identifying the obstacles. Sometimes it's actually convincing the obstacles that they're obstacles. And that's fine, because hearing that from a third party is sometimes more effective than when you say it. It's truly unfortunate that oftentimes I get paid to say something in a law firm that one of you on this call has been saying for a day, a week, a month, or a year, or 10 years. Maybe some of you for 25 years. I say it and people go, We should consider that. And sometimes they even do that thing where they look at you and they say, hey, Susie, we should consider doing this. And you're like, seriously? I've been saying that for 5 years, and now we're going to do something about it? I get it. That's super frustrating. But that is the reality in some firms, is we get caught up in this inertia, this way we've always done it. Or maybe it isn't such a strong commitment to the way that we've always done it. And it's just the inertia of, it is so much easier to do today what I did yesterday. Like, why haven't I started going back to the gym? Because I didn't go to the gym yesterday. But if I go to the gym for like 5 or 6 days in a row, or for every other day for the next 2 weeks, suddenly it becomes easier because I'm creating a new habit. That's what it's really about. It's about thinking, what are the new habits that we need to create? What are the new things that we need to teach people? I hear all the time about failed technology implementations. And a lot of times when we're thinking about this big picture transformation, we think about technology. We think about, okay, if we're going to transform, that means we need a different software program, or we need a software program that's going to help us do A, B, and C. So we invest in a product, we get some training, and then we're like, okay, now you have the product. And the truth is, the real success from a technology implementation comes in like the 3 to 6 months following the go live, way more so than it comes from the 3 to 6 months of getting ready for go live. That's an important period of time, but the people and the user adoption thing, that's what's really important. I want to talk about this concept of change is hard. If it was up to one person and the temperature in the room was perfect, you could transform, you could decide yourself, we're going to transform how we get this work done here. But for most of you, if not all of you on this call, you actually need other people to be on your team to help get this done. Change is hard. And it's hard for so many reasons. The thing about change is our team members, the people who are doing the actual work, get into this comfortable motion of getting work done. When we say, I would like for you to do it differently, or when we ask them, how might you do it differently, it's very challenging to get people to imagine getting outside of their normal rhythm. Now, sorry, I keep touching my microphone and I know that you probably hear that, so sorry, I will try not to do that. For me, I love change. Like, let's do something new, why not? I love change. But not everyone feels that way. And when things are changing all the time, it makes people feel insecure. They don't know what to do next. Not everyone is comfortable saying, I don't know how to do that. Not everyone feels like they can say, I'm really sorry to the attorney that they're working with. This is going to take me 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes because we're doing something a new way. Not everyone feels comfortable in saying that. And I think that's something that we have to think about when we're talking about change management. We're talking about change is hard. It's not just about teaching someone how to do something new. Very recently, someone told me that we were talking about doing these training sessions in their firm, and one of the lawyers said, you can't invite my legal assistant into training when I'm in the office. I need her too bad. I am too busy. There's no way she can be away from her desk for an hour or two to go to training. You'll have to find a time to do it when I'm not in the office. And we had a conversation about how important it is for lawyers to support training, lawyers to support these initiatives around change management. For all of us to think about the concept of change isn't just about making a decision about how we're going to do something different. It's taking multiple steps back and saying, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? How do we communicate that we need to solve this problem? How do we communicate that with our entire team or with the team that this particular change is going to affect? How do we rally the troops? How do we get people to be believers in the things that we want to do differently? Not just around talking about change, Not just around talking about the specific, we're going to stop doing this and we're going to start doing this, but saying, we invest so much. Here's an example. We invest a lot of money in marketing. We are not doing a great job in tracking our referral sources in our system. It is really important for us, so we can understand the investments that we're making in marketing, that we have good data when it comes to matter referrals. The way that we're doing it now is we have the green sheet or the blue sheet or the yellow sheet or whatever you call it in your firm, and everybody, there's a space there that says referred by, and half of you fill it out and half of you don't fill it out. And then when it gets to the accounting department, half of you put it, if it's filled out, put it in the system, and the other half of you don't, or sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. And then we end up on the backside of that with very little information around referral sources. Let's talk about how expensive that is to the firm. And then you start giving examples about what can happen if you really understand where your business comes from. You make the case for the change. It's not change for the sake of change. It's change because there is a business reason for us to think about doing this differently. You ask people for suggestions on how we might do better here. Maybe someone says, can we automate that form? Because right now it's really painful to fill out that form and the text boxes don't work, or maybe you're still doing it with a pen. That's made it even harder when some people are in the office and some people are not in the office. But ask the people who are doing the work, what does it look like to transform this thing? You might even think about, one of our clients does a Transformation Thursday meeting, and once a month, their meeting happens to be remote, but once a month, they get a group of people on a call and they talk about, where's the friction? What's one thing that we want to work on in the next month to make it better? And they're not talking about big strategic planning. They're talking about small little things that they can dig into, where they can really make the case for why things need to change. One of the things that we're going to share with you as part of this is I have a really great website about change management that talks about the different change management models. And I would really encourage you, when you get our recap email, to click on that and read through some of the concept around change management. This idea of user adoption, the idea of a user on the backside of a change really embracing a new way to do things, whether it is technology or whether it is a process change, we should be focusing more efforts there. If we really want transformation, it's a journey that we all have to go on together. It's not a new program. It's not a new document that lays out our new process. It's a whole journey, how we walk through getting to the other side of something being executed more efficiently. And with everything that is going on in our firms, carving out the time to make that happen is so important. One of the examples that I give all the time is around the inefficiency around time entry and pre-bills and billing. There's so much low-hanging fruit there for us to think about how to get that process done faster, how to get people to understand the implications of taking 10 or 20 or 30 days to get bills out, or 15 days to get pre-bills reviewed. That's a great example of something where you could go in and think about, what are the cash flow implications of not getting pre-bills back, not getting bills out? What are the cash flow implications? How can you start to tell some business stories around this need for transformation, and not just the need to do something different from a technology perspective, but how we really dig in and help our people travel along that journey. The idea is we have to be thinking about how we make things better. My daughter played volleyball from when she was, I don't know, like 8 or 9, all the way through college. And she was a setter. If you are a volleyball person, you know that the setter is the offensive captain. They're the person that makes the offensive magic happen. The setter in volleyball is responsible for getting the second ball. And the only time someone else gets the ball, the second ball, is if it comes directly to them or the setter just can't get there. But the setter's job is to get the ball. When my daughter was very young, she joined her first club volleyball team, and she had a coach who looked at her and said, "You have one job. Your job is to better the ball. No matter how it comes to you, you have to make it better for the next person." The perfect volleyball pass to the setter needs to result in the perfect set so the hitter can make the perfect hit. When a ball doesn't come to the setter, but the setter manages to get there, and they get there through court burn and sliding, and sometimes there's a foot involved, sometimes an arm that comes way out, sometimes they have to jump off the floor like you didn't know they could jump that high. In those cases, their job is just to make it better, to do their best to make it better. Those hits rarely result in perfect passes. But if every pass to the setter was one that they had to get floor burn from, it would be very hard to win a volleyball game. My point is this: all kinds of second balls come to you. How do you make it better for the next person? It's also important in volleyball, they spend a lot of time on that first pass, because the more that there is the chances of a perfect set and a perfect hit really depend on that first hit. They spend a lot of time training there. We need to be thinking about how we spend a lot of time training when we onboard people, when we execute a new process, when we bring in a new software program, whatever that is our greatest opportunity to really execute and think about change and how we do things more effectively and more efficiently. If we were spending more time on that, if we were making sure that we set people up for success, we would spend a lot less time putting out fires. Maybe you might think about it as playing whack-a-mole. But a lot of our day-to-day lives are filled with running to this emergency and running to that emergency and running to this emergency. If we really want to transform and we really want to think about what we need to do to change what's happening in our firms for the future, we have to think about that from the foundation of what we're doing, from how we bring new people on, from how we do training, from how we make sure that our processes are documented, and that we're continually asking, how do we do this better? So, I want to say again, innovation and transformation begin from exactly where you are. I'm sure you've all had the situation happen where someone, maybe it's even been you, comes back from a conference. Sometimes it's your lawyers. They come back from a conference and they say, "Hey, I was talking to John, or I was talking to Barbara, and she told me about this cool new thing that they use at her firm. We should buy that and we should use that here." I would encourage you to not get distracted by those shiny objects. Transformation begins from right where you are. Sometimes we get calls where people say, "I need a new software program." And we say, "Tell me more about what's going on." And we say, "You don't actually need a new software program. You just need to learn how to use the one that you have. You don't need something new." Now, sometimes people call and they actually do need something new. Like the story where they call and they say, "Hi, we bought this 23 years ago. We've upgraded it several times, but the product is unsupported now. We can't call and get any help, and we don't really," sometimes you need a new program. But a lot of times you don't need a new program. A lot of times you need a re-implementation of the program, or you just need more in-depth training. Or you need your technology program to support an efficient process that is followed by all of your people. There are a lot of software programs out there for law firms. And I get the question regularly, which one should I get? Which one's the best one? The best one, number one, is the one you'll actually log in and use. So there's lots of firms buying software and never ever logging, or they log into it once or 3 times or 5 times and then they don't again. But the other important part about that is the technology that has 100 features, you're likely at go live going to be using 11 of them. I don't know how many features Word has, but I would bet my next 10 paychecks that the vast majority of people working in a law firm use less than 10% of the features in Microsoft Word. I was just working with my team for this Microsoft Word training that we're doing, and someone suggested that our LinkedIn ad says, Microsoft Word is not a typewriter. And I just laughed at that, and I thought, yeah, most people are using Microsoft Word like a typewriter. They're typing a sentence, a period. If you're old like me, 2 spaces, and then you start your next sentence. If you're not old like me, you probably only use 1 space in between. That's a whole nother debate for a whole nother day, but I can't get out of the habit of, sometimes if I'm sending my Word document to someone else, at the very end, when I'm done, I'll do a Control-A, and then I'll go to replace, and I'll do 2 spaces with 1 space and just let it fix the whole document for me so I don't have to be disciplined enough to only put 1 space in instead of 2. It's hard. Here's what I want to wrap up with. It really is all about the people. I mean, everything that we do is all about the people. I have a slide that I put up in a lot of my presentations that says everyone has a story. And I really believe that. And I believe that it is so important for me as a leader. It's so important for me as someone who works very closely with our clients on strategy. It's so important for me to learn people's stories. When I do strategic planning for law firms, I tell my contact at the firm that I want to have a one-on-one conversation with every person who's going to be in the room. And sometimes they say, really? I mean, we're going to have like 15 people in a room. And I say, yes. The number one reason why I want to do that is because I want to hear their story. I want to say, how did you get to the firm? Tell me how that went down. What's working really well? What's not working? If you had a magic wand and you could wave it, what would you change? I want to build a relationship with that person, even in just a 1-hour phone call. Because then when I get in a room with a bunch of them talking about how we're going to think about the future, they remember that I wanted to know about them. In fact, sometimes I even forget to introduce myself. Usually I've met them like on a pre-call, but I don't tell them anything about me. My story doesn't really matter. Their story matters. Every person on your team has a story. Michael Cohen earlier said, everyone's fighting a battle that you don't know anything about. It's so true. We have something I've been talking to Stacy on our team about. She runs our people ops team, and we've been talking about how there are a fair number of people at Affinity that we know of that are going through really challenging times because they've shared it with us, which also means that there's a bunch of people who are going through it that haven't shared it with us. Everyone has a story, and it impacts how they see the world. And it impacts how they trust us as leaders. And it impacts how they embrace change. And it impacts how they interact with the people in their close circle at work. And what we can do, if we want to transform our firms, and we want to think about change management in a really creative way, the first step to that is know your people's story. Start to ask some questions. When I get those people together, when I do strategic planning, and I say, we're going to do a little icebreaker. I mean, y'all can hear the groans that I get, right? You can already hear like, oh, we're going to do an icebreaker. And my icebreaker question for them is always the same. It's, what's your favorite brand? And I look around the room when I ask that question and people are like thinking, and I say, I'm going to go first because I want to make sure that, you guys, I'm going to take a minute and I'm going to be a little vulnerable. My favorite brand is always the same brand. I say my favorite brand is Orange Theory Fitness. Why? Not because I'm going to go to the gym for 1 hour and I'm going to spend some time on that stupid rower that I despise, and I'm going to have to get on a treadmill and there's going to be weights and it's going to be sweaty, and sometimes they have the fans on and sometimes they don't. It's not because of any of those things. It's because they are a gym that's building a community. And I've been going to Orange Theory for 10 years. 4 of my very best friends I met at Orange Theory 10 years ago, and I cannot imagine my life without them. I've worked out at 113 or something like that Orange Theories across the country, and it feels exactly the same every time I go. And I really admire what they did, because they didn't just build a gym, they built a community. That gives them enough time to start thinking about what their brand is. And what's so fun about this exercise is if y'all have heard me speak before, I've joked before about the law firm who says, our firm is really unique. And I say, oh, great, I can't wait, bring it on. Tell me about your unique law firm, right? Well, the brand exercise proves my point even more, because there is always someone who says, I'm not a brand person, I don't believe in brands. I'm an anti-brand person. Always someone in the room who says that. And I'm like, okay, got your number. Because you know what that teaches me about that person? So much more than if they would have told me their favorite brand is Costco, which, by the way, there is always someone who says their favorite brand is Costco. There's always someone who says their favorite brand is some grocery store. There's always someone who says their favorite brand is Amazon. There's always someone who says Target. There's always someone who says Apple. There's usually a couple of people who joke about, like, I was going to pick Crown Royal or Jack Daniels or Orange Swift wine. There's always an alcohol thing in there. There's always someone who has like a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Bass Pro Shop. Like, in my brain, when we go around the room and we do that, I'm like, check, 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 right? The room is full of all of that. There's also always someone who says, this law firm, that's my favorite brand. The things that I learn about the people in the room, it's so powerful. I learn things like, someone in the room will say, I didn't know that. I didn't know you liked fly fishing, because someone said, I like Bass Pro Shops because that's where I get all my fly fishing stuff. Oh, I didn't know you like fly fishing. Yeah, I go fly fishing for 6 weeks every summer in Jackson, Wyoming. This is a real conversation that just happened. They learn things about each other that they didn't know. I learn about them because they'll tell a story about their family or vacation. From the person who says, I don't have a brand, that's someone who does not trust anyone in that room. Wouldn't dream of talking about something that seems like it could be really personal. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the people. It's all about building trust. It's all about creating these safe spaces to make a difference, to transform your firm, to think about change management, to think about how you bring your people along in that journey. If you prioritize people first, the most magic will happen. And I get it. There's blockers. Yeah, like there are blockers. There are just people who are obstacles and are in your way. But do it anyway. Learn about the people anyway. Learn about their stories. Get them to come to you with their ideas. Make sure that those people feel heard. That's such a critically important part of all of this. In the follow-up that Chelsea is going to send out afterwards, we're going to send you all kinds of stuff that you heard about today. But one of the things that we're going to give you in that follow-up is a link to sign up. Some of you are probably already signed up, because we've done this now for about a year with at every ALA thing we've been to. But I have a newsletter that comes out every month that is a leadership toolkit newsletter. This month we're actually writing about how to not avoid the complaining sessions, like how to embrace the complaining sessions. You'll be the first ones to know that it's going to be, we're joking about it being Festivus, like the airing of grievances, how to embrace the airing of grievances, because y'all are getting them anyway. So why don't we embrace them? Why don't we say, tell me more. Tell me more about that problem. Let's think about 3 creative ways that we might be able to fix that. That is how we build trust as leaders. And when we have people on our teams that trust us, we can make change happen and we can transform our law firms. And I'm just going to say right now, we have got to start thinking differently about how our law firms take care of our clients, how we take care of our team members, how we deliver legal services. It is time to start thinking about that. The future is already here. It's not coming. The future is already here. And there's so much opportunity to do things better than we're doing them now. But it really starts with the people. Think back to Alan at the very beginning of the day. He talked about what happened to thank you. It starts with the people, making people feel valued, making people that feel like they can bring that to you. And when you do that, that's when the magic really happens.